In my previous segment, I talked about how left-wing activists who have infiltrated news media have gotten their competition banned from Google. If you're not familiar with the story, I just put it up. Basically, left-wing activists told Google that the Federalist, a conservative site, were liars. And so they got banned from the Google ad platform. The challenge, and the reason I bring this up, is the next story. Texas Police Department accuses Tucker Carlson of stoking confusion and bitterness with absolutely inaccurate report about cops dropping charges against rioters following day of Fort Worth protests. I bring you now to our broken reality. I don't know how or why this is happening. Maybe there's no grand conspiracy. It's just our reality is shattered. No one knows what's true anymore, but there are still people who hold power. And because of that, they just dictate sometimes some things are true, sometimes some things aren't. Right now, we have tens of thousands of people protesting for Black Lives Matter, which I have no problem with, to be honest. Protest for sure. But then we have the mayor and the governor of New York threatening church services. Okay, now that I have a problem with. If you're going to have a First Amendment, it's for everybody, right? If people want to protest, it's for everybody, right? This story of Tucker Carlson is fascinating. Fort Worth, Texas Police Department says Tucker Carlson lied, that he stoked confusion with an inaccurate report that they were dropping charges against rioters. Here's NPR. Fort Worth police drop rioting charges against protesters. Huh? What's true anymore, man? I wonder if it's intentional, or maybe people have just finally snapped. And now there's demented people. And I don't mean demented as an insult. I mean, literally, like, their brains aren't working properly, seeing two parallel realities, and they have no way to rectify it. How is it that the Fort Worth Police Department literally put out a statement on Twitter, Chief Cross to drop all charges for rioting that resulted from protests in Fort Worth. Each individual will be notified by letter that their charges have been dropped. The letter literally says Fort Worth police arrested several dozen people for rioting during protest. Since that time, the protests in the city have been peaceful, blah, blah, blah. We're dropping all the charges. And now Tucker Carlson, when he goes on his show and says the people who are rioting will have the charges dropped against them, Fort Worth comes out and says they lied. So I dare you to try and tell me what is actually happening, because I don't know what to tell you, man. I really, really don't. If I can't tell you which of these stories is true or why, then how am I supposed to be real news? How is anyone? Is the Daily Mail fake news? No, CNN reported the exact same thing. I'm just using the Daily Mail. What about NPR? Did NPR lie? Nope. They have a tweet from Fort Worth. So there you have it. Did any one of these people write the story saying that Fort Worth was contradicting themselves? I reported in the past that Fort Worth was dropping rioting charges against protesters, and now they're calling it a lie? There is possibly an explanation as to why this is, but it's semantic debate. And this is where the problem arises. Words have lost all meaning. Wow. Reminds me of V for Vendetta. Didn't he say words retain their meaning? They don't. And when words become meaningless and we can't communicate, everything falls apart. Take a look at what they said. Last night, Carlson told viewers, on May 31st, a crowd of Black Lives Matter demonstrators blocked a bridge in downtown Fort Worth. When police arrived to disperse them, they threw rocks and bottles of bleach. 3 police officers were injured. The mob then went on to loot and vandalize businesses. Dozens of rioters were arrested for this. 10 days later, the city's police chief, Ed Cross, said he was dropping all charges against them. On June 9th, Fort Worth police had tweeted, Chief Cross to drop all charges for rioting that resulted from protests in Fort Worth. Each individual will be notified by letter. However, it clarified the tweet soon after by adding, anyone who protested and was arrested for vandalism, criminal mischief, theft, etc., do not fall under this. Separate cases and charges. The dropping of charges is solely for the charge of rioting. And there is the semantic break. What does rioting really mean? Oh, they had to clarify. Perhaps they should have deleted their initial statement. They meant specifically if your charge said rioting. Now I understand what they're trying to say. But why criticize Tucker Carlson when the mistake was theirs, when they had to follow up and issue a clarification that most people didn't report? In fact, I don't believe NPR actually reported any clarifications. So if I was to see a story from NPR, one of the preeminent news outlets in this country that everybody, all these people listen to and deem trustworthy, why would I believe that anything else was incorrect with this? They just say, as far as I can tell, that they're dropping the rioting charges. Online, the reaction across the statement was mixed, with some accusing the police chief of issuing a free pass I don't think they mention at all an update. Nope. In New York, the Manhattan District Attorney Vance Jr. said Friday the office would drop illegal assembly and disorderly conduct cases stemming from demonstrations. The city has not followed suit, prompting the Senator Brian Kavanaugh to urge Mayor Bill de Blasio to follow, blah, 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 blah. So if Tucker Carlson read NPR and then he got the story wrong, whose fault is it? Maybe nobody's. But that means no one really knows what's happening anymore. And that means you will see activist organizations exploit this to go to Google and say, see, here's the proof they're lying, and then get people banned. And Google seems to be following suit. So I guess it's only a matter of time before those who control the modern institutions purge all of their ideological opponents. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. At least I don't think so. However, I don't believe these conservatives will simply roll up into a ball and die. They're going to find other means to get access to resources. And I think eventually things start getting really dangerous. There are people in this country that are predominantly conservative. What happens when they just stop using services because conservative alternatives pop up? What happens if not even hardcore conservatives start using other platforms? I mean, a lot of people are starting to use DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is becoming very, very popular. But DuckDuckGo is a search engine, and Google is a massive network of services. What happens when conservatives start promoting something else and you create a parallel economy? All of a sudden then, what? Does Google collapse? Maybe. Hopefully. I know, the hand that feeds me for the most part is Google. But if we're walking towards the complete and utter collapse of our society because Google is arbitrarily just shutting down political rivals of ideologues, then it's only a matter of time before alternatives pop up. If the ideologues of Google and Facebook, Twitter, or otherwise maintain a substantial amount of power because leftists won't use conservative platforms, you end up with parallel economies. That gets bad. That gets really bad. Because now you have independent financing for infrastructure, meaning these people can go at each other and not worry about losing their jobs. It means they can increasingly say worse and worse things. You know what Google could have done? Very simply, reached out to the Federalist and said, these violate our rules. Here's what we want changed. Guess what? The Federalist probably would have been like, we can or can't, we'll make some changes. Instead, the ban hammer comes first. So when you see a lot of these people banned, conservatives, for instance, they then lose all control over the individual's ideas. If Twitter, I think it's one of the things social media companies have actively tried to do, social pressure to force people to bend to certain ideologies, saying, if you say this hashtag, we'll ban you. Well, a lot of people say, F you, I'll do it anyway and get banned. A lot of others say, okay, I won't say that hashtag. Take, for instance, me. There's a certain name I can't say, and I've agreed. It's not worth saying the name, I won't be banned. And I think it's the right thing to do. Because if I did decide to say some name, you wouldn't learn about this or the other segments that are extremely important. But even I have a line. I got really, really close to basically just shutting everything down when they told me if I said this name that my videos would be removed. Not banned, to just remove any video where I mention a certain name. And so I decided it's probably a better idea to avoid saying the one name because people can still find it in other ways. This way I can still keep you informed about what's happening. But there will come a time where they're going to say to me, Tim, you can't say this thing. And I'm going to say no. And that's probably coming really, really soon. Now, many of these conservative sites have straight up said, this is where I draw the line. So Google just bans them outright. I'm kind of trailing off. The point I want to bring up here is that we have broken reality. And if no one can really understand what's happening, then there's no accurate way to actually solve our problems. Or there's no actual way to solve our problems. Who should be president? No idea, because I don't know what's going on. Because the media lies nonstop all day, every day. Everyone's wrong. I think the whole system is just shattered and there's no truth anymore. Maybe that was the goal. I have no idea. Maybe some people wanted it to be that way. Maybe they're nefarious actors, or maybe it's just the advent of social media breaking down our ability to understand the world because we don't have any thought leadership anymore. We used to have one big tower, an obelisk beaming down to the masses. In Chicago, I mean this quite literally, from the Sears Tower, now Willis Tower, broadcasting signals for television, very few channels for which to get your news and information. And with the creation of the internet, you now have so many different subcultures that believe completely different things. When this reaches the mainstream, you now have people who don't know what's real anymore. I read NPR. NPR says Tucker Carlson is right. Daily Mail says Tucker Carlson is wrong. Fort Worth says he's wrong, but NPR says he's right. So I don't know what to tell you, man. Who's right and who's wrong? Nobody? Everybody? Never anybody? I have no idea. So I'll tell you why I'm bringing this up. I think what'll happen next is they're going to take old videos of mine where I used certified NewsGuard sources, but the story's changed, and they're going to say, here's Tim doing a video that's fake news. And they will retroactively, basically give me strikes. Oh, you violated the rules on fake news because you said this thing. And I've already reached out to Google about this. And I've said, if I can't tell what is real because the news is flipping back and forth constantly, how am I supposed to be, in line with the rules? And they say, just don't worry about it. Just keep doing your thing. Yeah, okay, great. That's not it. I know. November is coming soon. If you like what I do, you can go to timcast.com/donate and support my work. Otherwise, it'll only be a matter of time. And I really do think that's the case. A couple months, maybe. We'll see how it plays out. I got one more segment coming up in just a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.